Their biggest cities where they have the highest volume is also where they're going to have the highest competition. So I don't see that stopping. I see cities stepping in to sort of put a backstop, like in New York City, established a driver pay minimum. So they can only go so low in terms of actually paying the drivers, but that doesn't mean they can't continue to compete on passenger subsidies, which will be an enormous source of loss. What you see is that these companies, when they came out, projected we're technology companies, we don't have the overhead and the liability attached with transportation, and the filings make it clear that they're fundamentally transportation companies, and they are experiencing the overhead and expenses and liability that comes with ground transportation, which is, not an easy business. Public transportation. Uber operates, the ride shares in total in the U.S. are starting to scale up to the total national public bus volume. And that transportation is highly subsidized. It moves a lot of people. So this is the same kind of subsidy in a different version.
Yeah, and your point is even more true when a quarter of your bookings come from 5 big markets, right?
Yes.
I mean, they're going to have to smooth that out somehow, aren't they?
Yeah, and these are, they got into markets that already had robust public transportation and robust taxi.
And stole share.
Right, and stole share, and now they're competing against each other. And you can see very clearly, granularly, like in New York City, where the trip data is out in the open for the public and investors to look at, which is a great, tool for investors, just how that ebbs and flows. If they have a bad week in the press, who's going to get more market share the next week?
In the S1, under the risk factors, they do talk about, for Uber specifically, they do talk about government regulation. In a city like New York, you mentioned the minimum driver pay. There's obviously caps on ride sharing as well. Now there's the congestion pricing that'll start to be adopted in the coming years. As someone who, until recently, worked for the city, is this something that you expect to see rolled out in more cities? And have there already been conversations, maybe from New York on out, with some of those other places where this could be the case?
Absolutely. Just on April 8th, London passed their congestion surcharge on the Ubers and Addison Lees, and they'll be charged an extra fee for going into the congestion zone. Up until April 8th, they had been excluded from that. So London is certainly following suit. You have cities like Sao Paulo where they're charged per kilometer. Mexico City is looking into the same thing. These cities are realizing, just like New York, the drain on infrastructure, the drain on public transit, and the need for them to get something back from the companies that are using the road space and taking customers off of public transit. So certainly think cities are going to be talking to each other a lot more, and as part of my work with NYU, I'm going to try to facilitate that, because it's important that they be on the same page about how to handle new companies coming in and how to handle the infrastructure demands.
Uber Pool, getting multiple people in a car at a time, very important to Uber's business model. They're trying to push that, figure out ways to grow it more quickly. Do you see any regulatory barriers to that, or is that something that you think various cities would welcome?
Cities are welcoming it, and in regulation, they're favoring it. So, for example, both in New York and London, the congestion fees are reduced when you have shared rides. So I think that cities see that as a more efficient way of moving people. And these services are certainly complementary to public transit. It can't be everywhere at all times. It's been a lifeline for people that are in transit desert. So that's not in dispute. But if there's ways to make it more efficient and incentivize those by giving them a discount on shared rides, most cities are definitely taking that approach.